What's going on, guys? It's 8:41 in the morning, West Coast time, June 28th, 2024, Friday. If you're homeless, you're screwed. Supreme Court of the United States of America just decided you're not citizens. You're not even worthy of being human. The conservative side of the Supreme Court has ruled and had supported grants pass ordinances to where ticketing and being shoved around because you're trying to camp outside without having any place to live, well, it's not considered cruel and unusual punishment. They already got it posted. It's online on the Supreme Court uh, on their website for that one. It's under Grant Pass. Basically, what it means in any city, any town, if you have to camp on either private or public, you're going to get ticketed one way or another. Maybe if the people on the private property would allow you to, but on public property, nope. You can't camp anywhere because it's against the law. It's against what the Supreme Court has ruled. So in Oregon, in Grants Pass, you're homeless, you're screwed. Case closed. You're not worthy. You don't have a roof over your head, you're screwed. And what they mean is brick and mortar, not a tent. You can't even go underneath an underpass and camp. Not allowed. Excuse me. You can't even go to a park. Can't do that. You are ticketed, you are fined, you are jailed. According to whatever the ordinances are for the town and for the state. So, if you're homeless, you've got no rights, according to the Supreme Court. You don't have a right for a roof over the head, unless you can try getting into a shelter, if there are any. Be that may, even if the city actually had property that hasn't been used for decades or years, you still get ticketed because you're not allowed to live there or even stay overnight. Ordinances and stuff. Which means cities and towns that have the proverbial homeless blight, they can be mowed over, plowed over, shoved, ticketed, fined, jailed. Their stuff confiscated, tossed in the garbage can. Gone. Their history. You're not human anymore. Irony about being the homeless situation, you had to have something. You had to have home. You had to have something to be considered part of a home. And then when you lose it, you lose being a citizen. You may try to vote. You have a car. Well, maybe you can drive around a little damn place. Can't park anywhere unless you're going to be paying for parking or trying to find another place. But basically, you're homeless, you're screwed. Corporations and government says so. Supreme Court has said so. So basically, you're all screwed. Everybody in the 50 states is screwed. Even if you could find a forested area and camp out there if you can. You better make sure that you got parking permits, and you sure as hell got to have camping permits for the damn thing. Otherwise, you're screwed. Okay, if you put up a residence over there, unless you got documentation, you're screwed. I was waiting for the ruling to come on down and say that it was cruel and unusual punishment for telling the homeless people that they can't sleep anywhere. Even when the shelters are full and there's no place physically to lay down, you're a zombie. You're doomed to walk the city streets. Unless there's going to be a private party out there to host you, don't expect any help from the cities, the counties, and the state. Because the Supreme Court of the United States has just determined that you guys don't exist. You're not human. And you will be jailed. First, you'll be ticketed. You'll be fined. You'll be going through court and you'll be jailed. As if there's enough capacity in the jails to house that many homeless people. You could be camping right along rail lines, and that's going to be up to the cities and the counties, not to mention the rail companies, if they'll allow you to do such a thing. In the Antelope Valley, California, we have vast areas. However, if you're under a certain city jurisdiction area, such as Palmdale or Lancaster, even the sparse spaces that they have in between housing complexes and businesses out there, they are considered ticketed and they are considered jailable. I've heard some of the quote-unquote stories about the cities and counties trying to help the people, but the Supreme Court has decided that the cities are going to jail you. They're going to ticket your ass, and then you don't comply, you don't pay, you go to jail. 3 days, 3 hots in a cot. Only if they have capacity to house that many homeless people out there. And there were stories that I've came across about people having places to sleep in the desert areas. When there's not enough cops to patrol and cite and to incarcerate. The homeless community still tries to survive one way or another. But in urban and suburban, there is no place for them to live. There is no place for them to stay. They will try to camp, and it'll be up to the police to tear out down the homeless establishments and to shove people around. Because the Supreme Court has decided that the homeless don't have any rights. Under the conservative court, all these people making this kind of money, they've never been homeless. They've never been on general welfare. They never lived on survival. They're too well off and too comfortable and paid off. They don't know what it is to lose a job, to be thrust out of a home, to live on the streets, dealing with people's scorn, even when you need to go to the bathroom to take a leak. Unless you're a customer. Unless you're a customer of a sort, good luck in finding a bathroom to use. Even if it's just to wash underneath your armpits. There are bus terminals that are used as homeless shelters, ad hoc. I suppose those places are going to be locked up for the night. Some homeless try to use it as a shelter for protection and warmth. City workers usually having a hard time trying to clean up the place because it's that filthy sometimes. It's kind of hard for passengers to use them, especially when they're waiting for buses and they need those kind of places. You got the money to find another place, good luck. Who does when you're homeless on the street? $5 is like $5,000 sometimes. But depending on the food prices, it's going to be out there. Try to get a bus ride out of there if you could. But where would you go? When you're homeless, you have to stay near the areas that actually have food in some services. Maybe if there was a resource center, then maybe you catch a hot shower, maybe some fresh clothing, and maybe some food if you're lucky. But then again, you have to go outside again, try to find another place to live, but hopefully closer to the food. It's never easy when you get sheriff's department knocking on your door and gives you the eviction notice, the one that you dreaded coming up, and then get tossed on your ass, leaving the rest of your stuff inside, and you can't get to it ever again unless they're going to be putting it in the garbage bins, and then you're going to have to pick through this shit just to get your stuff out of it. You have to say goodbye to the stuff altogether and just move on. Even worse when you don't even have any transportation. You're stuck in the streets. Nobody will give you a roof over the head, maybe temporarily, not even overnight, not even just to sleep a little bit. Not allowed, not going to. Even if you heard that there was shelters, first come, first serve, and they've got stringent rules, and if you can't follow them, you're out. But even in their shelters, there's no security. Things get stolen. Shoes get stolen. You have to walk out there with bloody feet because sometimes the ground has a lot of sharp edges and hot as hell to deal with. Maybe you've got the sensitive skin that you can't deal with the sun all that often. It becomes a medical condition. You have to go to county places, wait for hours on end, or even at urgent cares, hours on end, just to get seen. And are you in the records? You have to go through a long paperwork process just to be registered, even temporary. They expect you to have a place or a mailing address. Post office doesn't work. You have to have a physical address. If you knew of a resource center that would hold on to mail for a short time, you would have to frequent it a lot just to make sure that you're going to get your mail. Otherwise, they have a tendency of throwing it out. They'll hold it for a short time, but then afterwards, say goodbye to it. And if it's mail coming from a county, you best be getting to the mail office or wherever you get your mail held and get that information. And then make your way over to the county place, wherever the place is at, and wait in line for hours. Bad enough when some people have to camp out there overnight, but because of Grants Pass ruling issued by the Supreme Court, hell, you can't even stay outside the public places. It's about what a county would say. But the thing is, it's depending on what the county ordinances are going to be for both city and state and local, just to see whether or not if you're actually going to be allowed to sleep in certain areas and wait for the place to open up. Hard as hell. If you were to secure a place or two, or maybe for a night or two, that'd be considered a miracle in itself. You happen to go to job places over to county places, and if they actually had any places available for employment, you got to fight like hell. You have to find other resource centers to get you some clothing if you can afford it. You even have to borrow it. Go for the job interview and then maybe secure it. It'll take about 3 weeks for a paycheck to come in. Meanwhile, if you're lucky, you've got a voucher that'll last maybe up to 2 or 3 weeks if there was a place available out there for you. And if your stuff is going to be secured or not. Identify with them. I know what it's like to get up and down that pay scale. You're considered a human being? No, you're no longer considered a human being. You have a mother who's health conditions, she's on county, but she gets back to work. She's still got her health conditions, but she's got to struggle. You get the paycheck going, to get a roof over the head, to get the utilities going, to make sure that you've got some kind of living going on. Oh, I'm sorry, the job just ended right there. Rent overdue. You lost utilities. And then you see law enforcement kicking your ass out. Maybe you've gone through a divorce. Maybe you're going through something. This hurts. It scares the hell out of me. It should. It should scare the hell out of everybody who's been through this damn thing. I know how it feels. I know how it feels when you have to fight. When you have to fight people, entities, organizations, companies for survival. To keep a roof over the head, to keep the power going, to keep food coming in. Maybe have clean clothes if if you're lucky enough, or maybe having machines to get clothes cleaned if you're lucky enough, or even pay the machines in order to get clean clothes, or even have the laundry and fabric softener for it. Try that one. And if the machines haven't been busted enough, if they're still working and available, maybe you're lucky on that point. If not, screwed on that one. Some people consider it's not in my backyard, NIMBY, until it becomes their problem. And when I had been going over to a lot of the resource centers for food, a bag full of grocery, it'll last maybe about a day or two if you're lucky. But every 1 or 2 weeks you go back in. Or sometimes it's every month. Some places were actually able to give you 3 or 4 bags of groceries that'll last for how many people you've got in your family. But you are still stuck, bouncing from place to place to get enough food, to hear word, to hear information on the streets. I don't know what people expect. Yeah, homeless have been out there for a hell of a long while. You even had hobos. Some of the stories have been told, and other stories haven't been told about the hobos. Long ago and for these days. They're the equivalent of the homeless. Bounce on transportation, trains. Go from one place to another place. They'll stay in different areas, away from the public. Camp out for a day or two. Would have to strike out to see what kind of food sources they can get so they can have a meal or two. Pack up and move on out. You think it's easy? They all think it's easy, but it's not. This is not easy. You're homeless, you're screwed. You are going to be pushed around by people who don't want you, don't like you. They don't consider, they never considered that they could be in the same situation. I had been in a few places that gave away food, had resources for some of the homeless people, even some of the low income people. If they needed job searching, if they needed job help searching skills, if they needed clothing, or even someone just to talk to, even a place for them to volunteer. But it's hard for them to understand, uh, not the people seeking those kind of services, but the people who look at the places and thinking, they don't get it. Because somewhere in the mix, there's going to be new people coming through. And they look like they got bling. Fancy stuff on here. It's even bad enough when they happen to go into county places for food stamps. Cached if possible. But if they have this kind of bling, they think they got money. No, they're holding on to their pride and they're holding on to their dignity, whatever they've got left. They try to hold on to the charm. Some people tried to skim on it for a long while. On the counties and cities, good gracious. But after that, there's always a limitation on it. There's always a limit. It gets harder and harder to deal with these things. I see my fair share. I've walked my fair share. But there isn't such a thing called fair share these days. Got to make do with what you get. You have to make do with what's here. Because after that, good luck on that one. So, word of warning, word of advice. Don't screw around with the fates. Be kind. Generous if you can. Share with what you have. But don't look down your nose at those who have nothing. One of these here days, it's going to be you. And you're going to have the people doing the same thing or worse to you. And that a chilling thought.